Hello and welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Today I am unboxing a classic board game from 2002, Star Wars Epic Duels. For those who don't know, Epic Duels is the precursor to the absolutely amazing Unmatched. To be more accurate, Epic Duels is the precursor to Transformers Armada, which in turn is the precursor to Unmatched. I now have all three games in my collection, and I will be charting the evolution of the system in a future video, but first I wanted to do a simple unboxing. And there are three reasons for that. One, this is a desirable game that normally goes for big money on the secondary market, so I thought it would be helpful to run through the full contents so you would know what to look for when buying one. Two, the components for this game are not great quality, and I wanted to show them off to help you judge if the game is worth those hefty price tags. And three, I was incredibly lucky to score a complete, unused, unpunched copy, and I wanted to have a record of what that looked like before I tore into the packaging. The box art gives you a fair idea of what you are getting here. It's a game for 2 to 6 players aged 8 and up, and it lets you relive classic duels or create your own. Which is kind of true. For reasons that will become apparent, at no point can you accurately recreate any battles from the movies. Do note, this game was published in 2002, which was when Attack of the Clones came out and before Revenge of the Sith, and for some reason the artist chose to showcase Kenobi fighting Jango Fett. Their fight in Clones is actually pretty damn good, but considering that same movie also has Count Dooku giving Kenobi a lesson in unarmed combat, it's not the scene I would have chosen to be front and centre. When I took the lid off the box, this is what I was presented with. Sealed figures and sealed cards in a cardboard insert, with other cardboard components beneath. The rules are, well, you can see, it's a folded black and white pamphlet. Not uncommon for older mass-produced games and franchise tie-ins, but it don't feel cheap. Then we have the wedge of cards, shrink-wrapped in 2 stacks. There are 12 playable characters in the game, and each one has a deck of 31 cards. Additionally, there are 6 reference cards, so in total that's 378 cards. And these cards are awful. Really thin. You can see mine are all warped just from being in the shrink wrap for over 20 years. I don't normally sleeve cards, but for a valuable old game like this with shoddy components, I'm making an exception. But that in itself is a problem, because the cards are a bizarre proprietary size that MB Games also used for Transformers Armada and the Queen's Gambit. They are 53mm wide by 73mm long. I could not find any card sleeves that would work for that size, so I bought the closest thing I could find. Yucatan narrow sleeves from Mayday Games, which are 54mm by 80mm. I do not think much of these sleeves, they are very thin, but they were cheap as chips and I was able to source 400 for about a tenner. You can see these aren't too bad on the width, but they are far too long, so I then had to knock up a little jig and hand cut almost 400 card sleeves, which was honestly an obnoxious task. This was my first attempt, which was pretty good, but I felt it was still just a bit too long, so afterwards I did reset the jig by a millimeter and I was happier with that. It will do the job. Next up we have our miniatures, 31 in total. There are 12 main characters and each of those has 1 or 2 minor characters that accompany them into battle. The minor characters add a lot of tactics and variety to the gameplay, preventing fights from devolving into 2 characters standing toe to toe hitting each other, but they do also impact on that promise of being able to recreate duels from the movies. For example, Luke is always accompanied by Leia, and Boba Fett is always accompanied by Greedo. Miniatures are individually heat sealed in plastic, and we will take a closer look at all of these in a moment. First, I want to point out the dice, which has all blank faces. That is because, hooray, stickers! Yep, they chose to use stickers because this is a custom dice. Boy, do I hate dice with stickers. But I am very lucky because, as I mentioned, I also have a copy of Transformers Armada, and in that game you get a screen printed dice with all the same custom faces as the Epic Duels dice. Absolute win. If you can source one of these Transformers dice somewhere, it is a solid upgrade to the Epic Duels components. Back to the box, we need to remove our 2 cardboard inserts, and I need to point out something weird here. The large insert has cuts in it. The intention is you push these through and it creates individual wells for holding each of the 12 card decks. But for the life of me, I can't figure it out. The cards only fit in the wells in an upright position, which means they stand taller than the box. I must be missing something here and I feel a bit stupid, but as I'm sleeving my cards, I don't think they would fit anyway. Still, an attempt was made, I suppose. I'll probably make a foam core insert at some point. Beneath the inserts we then have 2 sheets of character cards. These are so thin. If you need to punch them out, be really careful. There is a very real chance you could rip them. Your character selections are Vader with 2 Stormtroopers, Jango Fett with Zam Wessel, Yoda with 2 Clone Troopers, Darth Maul with 2 Battle Droids, Han with Chewie, Kenobi with 2 Clone Troopers, Boba Fett with Greedo, the Emperor with 2 guards, Mace Windu with 2 Clone Troopers, Anakin with Padme, the absolute legend that is Dooku with 2 Super Battle Droids, and Luke with Leia. While the designers clearly wanted to keep things balanced with 6 heroes and 6 villains, the omission of Qui-Gon Jinn is absolutely criminal. There is a heavy focus on lightsaber duels in this game, and not being able to reproduce his fight with Maul is absurd. I understand lots of extra characters have been created by the fan community, which is great, but Qui-Gon seems like a character who absolutely should have been in the box from the start. Finally, we have a double punch board. There are 28 wound trackers along the top. That is more than you will ever need. The most you would ever need at one time is 18, which would be for a 6-player game where each main character has 2 minor characters with them. You also get 2 game boards, each of which is double-sided. There is the Carbon Freezing Chamber from Empire Strikes Back, the Geonosis Arena from Attack of the Clones, the Camino platform from Attack of the Clones, and the Emperor's Throne Room from Return of the Jedi. They really seem to be pushing that Jango Fett vs Kenobi matchup. Including Jango as a playable character wouldn't have been a first choice for me anyway, but then they featured him on the cover, included the Camino platform arena, and even the art on the Kenobi deck features scenes from the Jango fight. Oh, fun fact though, as you get 12 characters and 2 boards, you would only need 3 more wound tokens and a second dice, and you would be able to have 12 players playing 2 6-player games simultaneously. That's pretty neat. But I know what you're thinking. What are those pre-painted miniatures really like? The answer is, not great. I mean, they're fine, you can tell what they represent, and they are pre-painted. Just about. The plastic is a little rubbery. You can see here Zam's rifle is very bent. That will require some hot water treatment to straighten it out. Anyway, the idea with this packaging is you are supposed to be able to tear along the perforations between the sections, and then, well, then you have strips of miniatures that are still sealed, so I guess it's time to grab some scissors. And here we pause for a moment, because this is it, the point of no return. Once the bags are cut, there's no going back. Do I want to keep this game in pristine condition? Heck no, I want to play it. This first figure I am cutting open is Luke. He's in his black Jedi jumpsuit with the green saber, looking like an absolute badass. I'm now going to go through each miniature very quickly, giving them a 360 so you can see the detail, or lack thereof. So yeah, Luke is pretty much all black except for the face, hair and saber. The pose is okay, but there are more iconic poses they could have gone for. Next is Mace Windu, obviously with the purple saber and in his Geonosis attire. This isn't a bad figure. Bit of a low blow to put him in the pose from the moment where he takes off Jango's head though. Way to rub it in, Mace. This is Kenobi, man-spreading as much as possible. Thankfully they based the sculpt on his appearance in Attack of the Clones, so we don't have to put up with dopey Padawan Kenobi. And we get Anakin, of course. This is Attack of the Clones Anakin dual-wielding in his first fight with Dooku, which is my favourite duel from the prequels. Yeah, I said it, fight me. And our final Jedi is Yoda, who has forgotten to draw his lightsaber and is instead scaring away his opponents with a fine impression of a ghost. I'm one of those people who thought Yoda should never have been shown wielding a lightsaber anyway, so I'm fine with that. Now we move on to the Sith, and we have the criminally underused Darth Maul, whose duel with Qui-Gon in Phantom Menace stole the show. If only there was a game about epic duels that would allow me to recreate that battle. Oh well. We have Palpatine, and here he is in his original trilogy Emperor mode. It's a pretty boring miniature, all black except for the small amount of face exposed. One of the weaker pieces, I would say. This is the Great Count Dooku, a legendary badass played by a legendary badass. Christopher Lee is one of my favourite actors of all time, and he absolutely elevated this role, and his dueling scenes are fantastic. They tried to capture his fencing style in this miniature's pose, not sure it quite works. It looks like his saber hilt is upside down too. Our final Sith is the OG bad boy, Darth Vader. Not a bad sculpt, but not a whole lot to say about this one really. All black with a red saber. I guess we will move on instead to a selection of scum and villainy, starting with the poster child for this game, Jango Fett. Someone clearly loved Jango because they went a bit extra with his paint scheme, and I admit he looks pretty cool. With the 2 blasters, backpack and utility belt, they captured that sense of him being a character with a powerful array of weapons to lean on. He is accompanied by the assassin Zam Wesell. Her rifle straightened out quite a lot with the hot water treatment, but it's still a bit droopy and I will need to give it a second go. Next is Boba Fett, the only Mandalorian I need, and this is probably the best miniature in the set. The sculpt is decent and they put a lot more effort into the painting. He's got way more applications than anyone else, which becomes very evident when you look at his sidekick for this game, Greedo. Poor Greedo. Whether he shot first or not, there's no denying he looks like they forgot a few paint layers on him. At least he has a nice vest. Next is Han Solo, who also has a nice vest. His pose is absurd though. He looks like he just walked out of a Monty Python sketch. Still, it's nice to have Han in the set. He gets another chance to outdraw Vader. Naturally, Han's partner is Chewie with his bowcaster. Despite quite a static pose, I think they captured the personality here. Look at that little head tilt. Obviously, everyone will want to play as Chewie because you should always let the Wookiee win. Then we have Padme. She is in her Geonosis Arena attire, which I guess makes sense because it's one of the few scenes where she is in the thick of the fighting at a time when Anakin wasn't still spinning, because that's a good trick. Leia is next and they put her in her Cloud City outfit, which I think is a good choice. You will have to excuse that droplet of water on her leg. I had to repose her with hot water and I guess she hadn't fully dried when I took this video. Then we are into the minions. First, the battle droids. You get 2 of these. I think they are called Roger and Roger Roger. Very clunky sculpts, but they do the job. Next are the clone troopers. You get 6 and they all ally with Jedi characters. I get a feeling those Jedi should watch their backs. And it is worth noting, any units you get more than 1 of have notches in their bases, so you can theoretically tell them apart during a battle. The notches are almost impossible to see and will need painting. There are 2 Emperor's Guards. At this point I guess the painters had given up and gone home for the day because these are just solid red, no detailing whatsoever. Meanwhile, Count Dooku gets a couple of super battle droids to keep him company. Again, no painted details, but it's not a bad sculpt. And finally, the classics, the OGs, Vader's Stormtroopers. You get 2 of these, and it is so disappointing to see such a lack of attention to detail. They are completely white, except for their black guns. So overall, the painting is not great on these sculpts, and I know what you're thinking, repaint them. Well, I won't be doing that. This is a rare out-of-production game. If the miniatures were unpainted, I might have painted them, but I want to preserve the game as it was, and that means these official paint schemes are here to stay. I know, I'm weird. And if you're interested to see how these miniatures compare scale-wise with some other ranges, here's some of the gang hanging out with a Colonial Marine from Alien vs Predator, a Space Marine from Games Workshop, and Trap Jewel from Archon's Masters of the Universe Battleground. Note that the Epic Duels miniatures are on oval bases rather than round or square bases, so if you do plan to use them in other game systems, you may want to rebase them. But that pretty much wraps things up. Overall, this game is packed with components. 31 miniatures, 378 cards, and 2 double-sided boards, so there is plenty of game here. Unfortunately, the components leave a lot to be desired. Even for the time, these would not have been considered top draw. But it is what it is, and I am very happy to have this as part of my collection. Watch out for my full review in the future, along with a closer look at how this game system has evolved over the years. And why not let me know in the comments which is your favourite duel from Star Wars? And if you don't say Luke's first duel with Vader on Cloud City, which is the best sword fight in cinematic history, you are wrong. And thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.